Now, the best thing about life insurance is that there's two reasons to own it. You love somebody or you owe somebody. Does anybody not have one of those two things in their life? Right? So this slide here, go ahead and take a look at it. Once we're all done, we'll pass this out. But to see where all these different things lay. The big thing here is that when we are looking at doing tax diversification for a financial plan, there's really only three places that you can go for that tax never again money. That's going to be the Roth, which a lot of clients aren't able to fund, or if they can, it's not enough, or municipal bonds, which we know are going to be a little bit lower yield in general. And you do have to be careful about what you're buying, what municipalities, to make sure that you get both the federal and the state tax exemption. So the big thing we have with our life insurance, right, we just want to put this up here for our FIUL product that has a guarantee that you will never lose money based on a market return. So we've got the 0% floor, and that we do get to index into some fantastic options that we have at Allianz. We have a few right now that have a history of matching up with the S&P over the last 20, 30 years. So in fact, the returns on them have been raw rates of right around 8%, and the S&P has been in the high 7s. But what we've done with those is, because of the hedging capability that we have at the home office, is that we can actually take that and put it to about a 200% participation. So whatever the market does, we'll double and give it to your clients. And if the market does 0, you still get that baseline floor. So I just wanted to lay that out there for you so that you knew that. The other thing with that is annual reset. Is everybody familiar with annual reset with these index products? Okay. Basically what this means is every year, so you go from the beginning of your policy year to the end, if you've lost money that year or not, it doesn't really matter. But let's say it starts at 10 and it ends at 5. You don't have to regain those 5 like you would if you owned an investment of some kind. You lose half your value, now you got to double it. With a policy that has that annual reset, next year you are basing your beginning point on where it ended. So if it goes up from 5 to 6, you've earned, you've made money, right? You've locked in. So you didn't lose anything on the downside, and you got to take advantage of that small increase or whatever increase there is. And you're not still behind the 8 ball trying to take the time to get it back up to that 10. All right, so tax environment. We're in a pretty low tax environment right now. So which products should you use and why? What we're talking about on this slide here is that when you put an FIUL into your financial plan, it doesn't really matter the tax environment. The idea behind it is that you have that flexibility and that you have access to use it if you wish. If they don't buy it, they don't have it. So in a low tax environment, right, you might want to be putting a little bit more into a policy like an FIUL. Take the income, pay the income tax if it's in that lower tax bracket, put it into the policy and let it bake. And then on the distribution phase, if you're in that low tax environment, fantastic. We didn't tell you to put all your eggs in this basket. We can let the life insurance product bake for a little bit, and then you can go to some of your other assets that are taxable, where you can reap those benefits of the deferred taxation that we've been preaching for many, many years. Now, in the higher tax bracket environment, that might be a point where they are going to want to slow down the funding of this type of a product and reallocate into something that is going to be the tax deferred, the pre-tax dollars types of investments. But again, then in that high tax environment, if they're in their retirement phase or if they need access to the money, now we go to a product like life insurance to pull out that money income tax free and avoid the taxation on our other assets. So we have to put this up here, right? This is not a free product. You do have to go through underwriting. There aren't any guarantees on that the income will be there for you, so on and so forth. We have a lot of information that can help you and your clients become comfortable with the projections that we do make with our illustrations, what the expectations that they can have at the outcome as well. So without further ado, right, let's get to the important stuff. How does this stack up against some of your other financial vehicles that you're looking at? What is that tax equivalent yield that you need to return? So we're going to go over 2 case studies today. Our product is good for many situations. We're going to focus on 2 of them. The first client here is what we call a Henry, high earner, not rich yet, right? Yams, young, affluent. This Henry, 40 years old, what we're going to be looking at is they've got $1,000 a month that they want to invest in some way into a financial vehicle. He's funding his 401k to the max, he's getting in his match and all that kind of good stuff. So now this is extra dollars. If he could fund a Roth, he'd been doing that as well. This is what you add on to a plan, not what you start with as a plan. So we're going to put that into these three buckets. Right? We're going to put into the taxable, your tax deferred, and your tax exempt. Each one of those vehicles, I'm going to give the exact same rate of return over the exact same period of time, and we're going to pull out $70,000 a year from them. And let's take a look at how that works in different tax environments. So right here what we have is with those plans, the top blue, that's an average 28% tax bracket. Okay? So with each of those plans, putting it into our system, which is called INSMARC. Did anybody here use INSMARC reports for their sales? Yes? Fantastic. It's a great tool. We'll show you a couple of things that you can gain out of it here in the presentation. But with each of those, the exact same investment, earning the exact same yield year over year over year, our taxable asset, we ran out of money at age 75. Our tax-deferred asset, we ran out of money at age 75. Right, we didn't change the tax brackets when we were funding versus when we were pulling out, so those are very, very equivalent. The best one here that isn't a life insurance product is going to be that tax-exempt option, those Roths, those muni bonds. Now we ran this at 7%. So yeah, you could probably get that in a Roth over a long period of time. Again, we talk about those funding limits or income limits. The municipal bonds, maybe we're reaching if we're looking at a 7% year-over-year return forever. Right? But with the Life Pro Plus, with our fixed index universal life, those assets lasted all the way to 120, and so did the income. So longevity taken care of. They're taken care of if they don't have longevity and pass away too early by that death benefit. The second portion of this slide down there in the orange and reds, that's where we're looking at just a 4% increase in the marginal tax bracket. Right? We saw how far those things can swing over 50, 60 years and have swung. So the what if. This is just a minor increase to that. But we lose 1 year on our taxable assets just by that 4% increase. We lose 2 years for the tax-deferred option. Of course, tax-exempt didn't move at all, 78. Still, most people plan on living a little longer than that. So the life insurance program doesn't get affected by that increase in the marginal tax brackets that we have to deal with. That's the main point that we want to bring out here, is how can we take some of that volatility off the table, which was a great part of that original presentation. And I would highly suggest, if you want to talk about taking volatility off the table, that you talk to Aaron after our presentation here today and talk to him about the index lock that we have available, as well as the financial performance of some of our options that we have for allocations. So here's what INSMARC can provide for you and your clients. What we have here is, obviously, the life insurance is showing as if it's going to be the best option. So, what if? What will we have to earn? What's that tax equivalent yield that we would have to earn on these different assets to match up with a fixed index universal life that we're showing? So instead of 7% for your taxable options, you have to get over 10. Okay? We're in the same marketplace. We're all dealing with the same S&P. We're all dealing with the same funds and everything that's available. So where are we going to get that extra 3% in comparison? Does that annual reset sound interesting to your clients so that they never go backwards on the money? We can start peppering in some of these questions and seeing how comfortable they are and where their concerns are with their financial plan. Tax deferred, we're still up at 10%. And we got pretty close with our tax exempt option, but now out there in your municipal bonds and your Roth, now you have to yield an extra 2% or 1.5%. What are we sitting at there? Yeah, we'll call it that. Okay, so same market environment, same situation, but you have to earn more in order to keep up with this life insurance product. And this is all in a chassis where people say life insurance is too expensive, right? That's going to always be that original thing. I know we got a bunch of accountants in here, right? So This is another point that I'd love to bring up to you, is that over a period of time, if we look to life expectancy with these products, we can get the annual average charge on their assets down under 50 basis points. For your really young clients, for the 30s and 40-year-olds, when we run our analysis, we can get them down at age 85 to about 20 basis points of average charge on their assets for the life of that product. We also have a financial tool that can show you that and that can display that to your clients as well. Again, at the 32% tax bracket there, 4% increase, everything bumps up about by 1%. Well, let's see here, let's call it 50 basis points on the taxable, let's call it, 30 basis points on the tax deferred. So you do need to get more, right? So if we think that taxes are going to increase, we are going to have to increase the yield that we're giving to your clients on these different types of assets. And can we do that, right? Again, same market environment, so wouldn't it be nice to have a little bit of a diversification inside of there? Any questions on the Henry or the basic concept that we're going over here today? Fantastic, all right. So these reports that we're showing you here today, this is one page out of 30, where we can show them the tax flow throughout the years, we can show them all the numbers of the accumulation value, the surrender values throughout time with all the charges and fees and whatnot, so that they can really dive into it if they wish, but there's also some great pictures, colors, types of things that will just pop out and where you can focus the conversation on if you so choose. All right, so number 2, we're gonna look at a transition boomer. So what do we consider a transition boomer? This is gonna be somebody in their 50s, right? They're looking at their retirement assets with you and they're saying, I'm doing okay here. I've got enough for a rainy day that I can access quickly. I've been funding my retirement funds really well, so I've got this huge pool of tax later assets. But you're talking to me about this tax exempt asset, and I've got, as comparison, I've got a golf ball compared to a beach ball with my taxable assets. So how do I get over and take advantage of that? So there's a couple of ways that they can do it. Of course, one is that they can divert what they're funding. So these are going to be clients that are maximum funding their 401k way past the match. Maybe we want to take a look at funding that to the match and then funding a policy like a fixed index universal life. Protect the family and set up that vehicle that's going to give them all these tax advantages. I want to make sure that I say that again. Set up the vehicle that gives them all these tax advantages. This is not an instant thing, right? They're not going to put the money in and then be ready to take it out right away. We have to build that vessel, and we need to give it a little bit of time. 10 to 15 years, I think, is a very fair amount of time. So it works for these clients here as well. What's another way that we can fund these? We can fund these using their taxable assets and converting them over like a Roth conversion, but doing it into a life insurance policy. So I call that mining the tax bracket. Now we're in a pretty low tax bracket right now. How much can they pull out to stay in, if they're in the 28% tax bracket for their money? How much more could they pull out of some of these assets that are going to be in the taxable, pay the taxes on it now at 28%, put it into the life insurance vehicle where they won't have to pay taxes on it again. That's one way that they can do that. There's 72T and 72Q programs as well. I see a couple of heads nodding. Anybody not familiar with 72T and Q? A couple of folks. All right, so those are programs where you can access those retirement assets for under 59.5, and they don't have to pay the 10% penalty. All right, we've got some pieces on that, again, that we can get out to you, but we can set those up, do the calculations on what those withdrawals will need to be consistently over a period of time until they reach age 60, and they won't get the extra 10% penalty on those assets. And those can come from an annuity, they can come from a 401k, wherever you want to take those funds from. There's just a couple of rules that you have to follow. So for this client here, didn't have much into their tax exempt side of their account, so they wanted to divert those assets. So in this case, what we did is we took those and we put $50,000 a year for 5 years. So this is not a lifetime funding, this is a 5 and done type of a plan. So they're putting $250,000 in, and then we're going to be pulling out some income in retirement completely income tax free at $28,000 a year. the graphs are going to look pretty similar, right? A little bit older, so doing a little bit better on this and funded it a little bit higher. So taxable and deferred assets, they're in their 80s now. All right, that's reasonable. That's not too shabby if they get the 7% year over year over year. Tax exempt, we're out to 91. Fantastic. If they get the 7% year over year over year. And then the Allianz Life Pro Plus. Again, out to 120 if they get the 7% year over year over year. I'm always going to, let's be fair on that. Each of these has to do the same thing. Now, honestly, our policies have received actual credits of right around 7% as an average since we've started selling them back in 2004. So I wanted to put that out there, that we do have a track record of doing that through a couple of different type of market environments that we've had over a few years, 2008, 2015, you name it. Where have they gone? 32% tax bracket up there, again, just a 4% bump. Everything loses ground except for those tax-exempt options. But what do they need to earn in return? Right? 10%, 9%, a little over 7% for that tax-exempt, right? A little bit older. Now that Roth conversion compared to the life insurance conversion, it's a little bit more of a level playing field. But what does life insurance give you that a Roth doesn't? A leverage benefit day one. Right? You fund a Roth, you transfer that money over, $50,000, you pass away, it's worth $50,000. You put it into this life insurance policy, you're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars for your family. So where's the trade-off there? So the key takeaways here are, as we're looking at the historical tax rates, our rates aren't locked in. Estate planning, we're going to phase out what are fantastic estate exemptions in 2025. So in 2 years, we don't know what those are going to look at. So for your clients that are concerned about their estate taxes and what they might go to, right, that say, no, it's 10 million right now, I don't have a problem. And your answer is, as long as you die in 2 years. So start smoking, right? So how do we plan for them flexibly is another thing to think about. A lot of times people go to the death benefit only type of products for estate planning and whatnot, but I would strongly urge you to look at flexible estate planning so we can get them that death benefit for the if the estate taxes are low when they die, because I don't know when I'm going to. I'm sure you guys all have it planned out perfectly, but who knows when we're going to pass. So how do we get them to have a plan that works no matter what the future brings from the IRS? So we could always be in a low tax environment, and fantastic, that'd be lovely. I've taken a look at our national debt, and I don't believe that that's going to be the case, but that's my personal choice. So using a product that has this available cash, we can set them up. Maybe they never use it for the cash value inside. But if they need to, if we do get estate taxes that exemptions that stay very high or they pass away when they're very high, that's fantastic. Great. Now they can go ahead and they can use that for their own use, their own income purposes, and to make those dreams happen that he was talking about before. So that was my quick presentation here today. I appreciate your time. There's a lot about the product that I would love you to know. This is just one area that I wanted to focus on for why you might position the life insurance with your clients as far as a financial asset. Any questions or any comments that I can help you with on our company product or this particular strategy?
So I have a question, because a lot of our clients are concerned about the cost of
Mm-hmm.
insurance, and we've shown people illustrations, but then they're still kind of not happy with the cost.
Yeah.
I know there are benefits as well, so can you just quickly tell our team how to handle that?
100%. Yep, so life insurance is too expensive is the number one reason why people don't want to buy life insurance. I give you $10,000 and at the end of the year I can walk away with $1,000. That's a terrible, terrible investment, or maybe nothing at all because of that surrender charge. So remember, as I said, this is going to be a 10-year plus type of a plan. Permanent life insurance is not something you date, it's something you marry. So you want to look at those fees and charges as they are concerned with what you're using the product for. So this is a front-end loaded contract, right? We are paying a commission. So up front, the charges are quite high. That's why we have that surrender period, is so that the life insurance company can recuperate all that we had to pay out to put it in force, right? So when we're looking at that portion, what I want you to look at as far as costs is, what are we using the product for? We have set up the vehicle, like we were talking about before, and the vehicle at that point is a death benefit protection for the family. We're not looking at it to pull money out. So what was the cost if they were to pass away and use the assets as they are intended? We're 50, 60 basis points as far as on the death benefit over those first, well, pretty much for the life of the policy, really. Okay, and that decreases over time. Now, of course, they're going to look at their assets and see those high charges up front. Those charges decrease over time. So unlike some other assets where we have management fees and whatnot, you're going to pay 1.5%, 2%. Your money grows, you're paying 1.5%, 2% on a greater amount. Life insurance doesn't charge on the assets that you have inside of the product. It doesn't charge on your money at all. We charge on the death benefit. We charge on the net amount at risk. Okay, so over time you do develop this product correctly, and we do have a couple of programs that we can help you out with, but we design ours for death benefit protection up front, and when they get to the point where they're going to be using it for that asset for reaping the benefit of this product, that's when we're going to bring the death benefit down within legal parameters to the lowest amount of death benefit that they can carry. And what that does is over time you've got 100 and some percent charges on your assets day one, but then in about 10 years for many of our clients, that average charge is around 1.5%. 15 years, we're getting under 1% of the year over year. And that's not the single year charge. That's the average that they would have paid through up to that point inside of the product. So what I would say to you is, yes, life insurance is expensive up front if you are only looking at it as a short-term financial vehicle. Right? But if you're looking at this as death benefit protection up front with the capability of accessing your funds tax-free later, then I'm going to take a look at those two different segments, right? Here's your accumulation phase, and we're using it for the death benefit here. We're not using it for income, and so your charges are 70 basis points, give or take, right? Now we're switching it over in year 15, year 20, whatever it happens to be for income, and then we can go ahead and I can show them that cost analysis. Now, you're not paying those high fees of the early years of the policies. Now that's starting to get washed out over time. And that's how we can get those down, because we're charging on the net amount at risk, not on the accumulation value, get down into those 10, 20, 30, 40 basis points average fee for a policy over time. Does that hit what you were asking for?
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic.
Can I make one more point? Jeff, can you go back to that Henry slide?
One more.
That next one. So what I talk a lot about, and when you see the full Innsmark presentation, is at 28%, the cash value life insurance fully charged. What did you charge? Because we can make and adjust how much is charged in the taxable, tax deferred, and tax exempt. What did we use for cost inside of? It's
gigantic to make it look good. Zero. So no management fees, no purchase fees, no anything.
So really the question is, I really look at it very simply. I'm a simple guy from Eastern Ohio. If you knew where I grew up, you'd understand me. But I really look at it like the cost of tax is way more expensive than the cost of insurance. It's very simple. And this graphic illustrates it perfectly, simply. But Jeff had a good explanation. But I wanted to point out we didn't charge anything on the two, on the three, the taxable, tax deferred, and the tax exempt.
To add on to that, but we did charge everything for our life insurance policy. So those fees that were too high, all that kind of stuff, the cost was too much. We put that in here. We didn't put any of those other charges into the other assets, and it still outperforms. Thank you.
And then would you mind explaining again to our team, like the differences between whole life and IUL?
Oh my goodness, yes. And actually, that's a long topic. But what I can tell you about these, so the two products overall, right? Whole life, it's the oldest insurance product in the marketplace. It's been around forever. Rules on illustrations are very well laid out, and we've got a long-term history of success. Universal life chassis, I can give you a short history. I got a little bit of time here. There's an unfortunate history of universal life chassis that has been shifting now since we got about to 2000, 2005. But there was only whole life and term up until about 1980, and then universal life came in. Interest rates at that time for insurance companies' general accounts, they could offer 14, 16%, a fixed rate. You give us your money, at the end of the year after charges, we're going to give you 15, 16% on that. Unfortunately, what happened quite a bit was it was viewed as how much insurance can we get our clients for how little premium. I knew agents that were selling it as a term alternative, right? We can fund this for less than a term and it'll last you 20 years. Well, what's the only way that works? If those rates stay 14, 15%. As soon as they start ticking down, we got to start making phone calls and saying, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you got to put a little bit more in. Sorry. All right? Those rates went down to about 8% in the 1990s, but what was doing really well based on our video that we just saw? Well, we know it was a bubble now, but technology at that time. My brother was a mutual fund wholesaler at that time, and he got frustrated because he would get laughed out of offices if he couldn't show them a 30% year-over-year return. Right? So is that reasonable? No. What did the insurance industry do? Well, universal life was only at 8%, but now we can illustrate 20% in this thing called a VUL. You give us $100,000, we'll give you $1 million of death benefit, you never have to pay us again, and you can take income from it later. Did we get 20% year over year? Yeah, no, we sure didn't. Okay? So early 2000s, we're seeing a lot of these policies lapse. We're seeing a lot of class action lawsuits. We're seeing a lot of this stuff. UL got raked through the mud. So one thing that Allianz did, and many others in the industry, is we looked at it differently. Instead of how much death benefit can we get for how little premium, it was how much can we fit into this financial vehicle. I view it as if you're running a company and you need a warehouse, right? Do you buy a 100,000 square foot warehouse if you only have 20,000 square feet of stock? No. You're paying too much for the space that you just don't need. Right? You have a 100,000 square foot warehouse, you better have a business that's putting in 80 to 100,000 square foot of product into that so that you're being efficient with it. A farmer, do they only farm 20% of their field, or do they seed the whole thing? They're going to seed the whole thing. That way, if prices go down, they still have more stock to go ahead to market with and make a couple bucks on it. Sorry, Minnesota boy, worked with a lot of farmers over the years. Where is it? Yeah, so there you go. Sorry, I got off track there. It's the lights. I've never been in front of lights and cameras like this. This is ridiculous. I feel like I'm in a movie. So we flipped the script a little bit. So for our products that are accumulation-based, we're filling up that warehouse, we're seeding the whole field, and we're giving them those opportunities. Now, if we don't get 7%, if we get an average of 6 or 5, there's still income for them to pull. If we get 8 or 9%, more income for them to pull. Better death benefits around there. But what we're doing is we're setting these products up for success. All right. One of the highest volatile and lapse ratio portions of business is premium finance. Familiar with premium finance? Borrow the premiums from a bank, pay them back later so that you can keep your assets invested. Maybe they're not liquid, you don't want to break them out or anything like that. We've been in that marketplace for a while, and 98% of the policies that we put in force on premium finance are still in force. Right? Those are highly volatile. They have interest rate risk, they have market risk, they have many, many risks to them. But because of the way that we're designing the policies now, and because of the returns that we can get them at Allianz, these things are staying on the books and staying healthy.
But if we have a new client, it's not worth it to do premium financing right now, right? Because the interest rate is too high.
You know, we've actually done some research on that, and we've gone back historically. There still is a plus risk premium going on in the marketplace today, right? Rates would have to go up about another 1.5%, 2% in order for us to get to a point where we've hit an inverse yield, and we wouldn't be recommending that type of a program right now. If you were to write a premium finance case with us, we also work with vendors. So we vet the vendors. We do require that you work with a vendor because they do this day in and day out. They know the relationships with the banks. They know to get the low point letters. They know what they need to do for you, and they take care of it so that you don't forget, right? For that, depending on how much they're going to do for you, they're going to take some sort of a split, 15%-ish or more. If you want to just back off and say, you do the sales, here's my client, they might take 50, 60%. If you want to do most of the work and they're just doing kind of the analytical side of things for you, maybe it's 15% of the commissions. But what they really add in value, these vendors, not only the expertise, but generally, we find that there's about a 25% increase in sale when we bring a client into them. Because they don't look at just how do we position what you've brought to us. They sit down with the client with you. They talk about different strategies, estate planning, whatnot, and they find other areas where it might make sense to bump up the coverage, bump up the funding, and to get you a little bit more. So many of our producers that are working in that industry find that working with a vendor, it's close to a wash, right? They're selling more, they're giving up a little bit of their commission.
Can you tell us who would be a good fit for premium financing?
Yeah, well, and Aaron's going to be somebody that can talk to you a little bit more. I do apologize, I'm going to have to hit the road. But premium financing is for your clients that can afford the coverage, right? They can afford the coverage, but it doesn't make sense. Business owners are a high target for this. Most of their assets are being rolled into their business year over year over year, right? So they take away from that, they slow down their business. It's a backward situation for them. Business owners also understand leverage. They do it all the time. So those are, I'd say, if you're going to start in that marketplace, that's the perfect place to start, is with your business owners.
Do they need to have like a certain net worth in order to be qualified for premium financing?
Yes, they do. But there are programs out there. So traditional premium financing, with Allianz, they need a net worth of $5 million if they're going to do that. What I mean by traditional premium financing is that's anywhere from all of the premiums are being paid by the bank, nothing by the client, or 10-15% of the total costs are being paid by the client and not the bank, right? So it's really highly leveraged. So we want those people to have a high net worth, because if this were to fail, what are those exit plans, right? If they can't take a loan from the policy to pay off the bank, do they have the assets to be able to take care of that, keep the plan in force, and get some benefits along the lines? Now, there's hybrid models as well. Kaizen, Omokazi, a couple others out there. Those are going to split it up. So Kaizen's the one that I'm most familiar with. That's going to be a 10-pay type of a policy, so 10 premiums. The first 5 years, the client pays half, and they only finance the other half. The next 5 years, it's fully financed. For those, it's $1 million or less of net worth. We can also do it on income. I think it's about $400,000 a year of income.
250. I would recommend somebody making a little bit more, like 400 range, household W-2 income for those type of plans. And they don't require collateral. There's no financial underwriting. It's all done through our underwriting with the insurance policy. So it's pretty good. And they're based here. They're in Plano, but they're in Texas, which is nice.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a lot better.
Yes, yeah. Many of the folks that we work with in our distribution office, they've done the Kaizen with NIW. They're a great team to work with. Grace and Dane, they've been in the industry forever. They do a conference. They pull in 300 people into their conference, and this is what they do is Kaizen.
Do we have time for more questions?
I can take a couple more, yeah.
Okay, I think we have some more time. Can you touch base on why cash value life insurance versus term life? Because many of our clients, they may take a look at the cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the term life, like per year is very low amount.
Mm-hmm.
But cash value life insurance, they have to pay monthly premium a lot higher. Can you tell us about the benefits?
Yeah, 100%. All life insurance is term. I didn't answer your question about the whole life before earlier. I'm just realizing that I kind of moved off of that. But all life insurance is term insurance. So term insurance is cheap because they're looking at a 10-year, 20-year period. They look at the costs over that period of time, and they average it out and they add in a little bit for profitability. Right? That's it. Whole life takes a look at that same cost of insurance, but it takes a look at it through maturity. And it factors that in. So what Whole Life does with all their guarantees, I went into the history of UL, but I didn't talk about the differences. So Whole Life is going to be that guaranteed product where they are going to guarantee you about a 2% return. They're going to assume higher charges as far as running their business, and they're going to assume a higher mortality rate. So for the same death benefit product, UL versus a Whole Life is going to have a higher premium. And then, over the years as it goes on, if the company does better than those guaranteed assumptions, they return back premium. So you paid too much, here's your money back as far as a dividend. That rolls into the product or comes out to the person. So they're designed more of a pay more up front and get the benefit if there's some advantages later on. You do get that guaranteed chassis. Now with the guaranteed chassis, there's a couple of things. The big one is access to the funds. So with whole life carriers, expect around a 1 to 2% net cost on any type of loans that you're taking from their policy. So that's one thing. Whereas with universal life policies, you can usually get at least a 0% net spread on those loans. And with IUL, you can actually make money on your asset. So you can take that loan, we'll charge you a fee, but we're going to leave it invested in your allocation. So if we charge you 5 and you earn 6, good for you, you made some money. If you don't think you can do that, no problem with our product. Just go into the fixed account for that year. You can switch it back and forth as much as you want and get that net zero spread. Right, but with whole life, if you want to do that, the free way to get the money is a withdrawal, and that's a permanent reduction in your death benefit. It doesn't come back, right? Whereas with a loan, you can pay it back. But you can only withdraw, that's that free money, where you're not getting charged on it, up to the cost basis. After that, you have to start taking loans. And that's where you're not going to see where you can make money on it. You're usually going to be losing money on those dollars. So that's the trade-off for all those guarantees, is that it's a little less flexible for getting the assets. The non-guaranteed universal life, very, very flexible. The main difference is we don't look at your life and say, all right, here's what we think we're going to pay, or here's some really conservative numbers that we're going to use for our projections. We take a look at what the charges are today. And we tell you, here's what we're charging you this year. Here's what we'll charge you next year. You get to choose how you want to fund that. And we'll give you some sort of a range inside of there. Again, I went to the point where we are saying that range, we'd like you about 90% of the maximum that you can put into this for that funding. We'll get to your term question here. But I did want to come back and touch on that. So flexibility in the premiums, flexibility in all those kind of things. And looking historically, and we have a whole presentation on this that's closer to a 45-minute one. But as we look historically, why would you take that risk, right? What's the risk premium that you're getting on these policies? So 2% is what we felt would be a pretty fair risk premium if we were looking backwards. So what could you get in a risk-free rate versus what do you get here inside of our product? And we compared that to whole life as well. And what we have found in the industry is that we are at about a 2% risk premium on our product. So because you're taking the risk, because you aren't paying for those guarantees and whatnot, and you are going out in the market and getting that, is it worth it? And we have some numbers to show you that we're getting 2% over what whole life carriers have been getting over that same period of time. Because whole life carriers, universal life carriers, our general accounts are basically the same. We're all 95% AAA or better, so our hedging budget, our budget to fund these for fixed returns and whatnot is exactly the same as far as that goes. So the difference is just how the product was designed overall. And guarantees do cost money, so can you get that risk premium back? We feel that you can, and we've got the history to prove it. So, but term. So all insurance is term. That's how those numbers come into play. So that term insurance, fantastic. 10 years, that's great. If you know you're not going to need the coverage in the 11th year, fantastic, perfect. Or if you can promise me you're going to be healthy in that 11th year. But remember how the cost of insurance goes up, right? You're young, you got $1 million a term for $23 a month. Yeah, that's awesome. Now you're 80. You want $1 million a term. I haven't run the numbers recently, but it's not $23 a month, right? Now you're thousands and thousands of dollars a month. So the idea behind the universal life is that, yes, you are paying more up front, but you're paying yourself up front. The term costs are the same over the life of over your life. Those extra dollars that you're putting in on top of that, that's your money, right? And that's what's in there to bake and to roll. So every year those charges are going to come out, and if you have $1 over those charges, $1 compounds. You have $5 over those charges, $5 compound. So again, setting up the vessel. They are still buying term insurance, but they're attaching it to the best tax advantage financial vehicle out there in the marketplace. And that's why we're positioning it that way. Another way that I like to do it, here's my simple way of talking term versus perm. All right, so you're going to a concert. You drive up to the concert, and there's 2 parking lots. One parking lot's charging you $10. The other parking lot's charging you $50. Where do you park? Of course, right. Come on, people. Right, $10. You don't have any other information. You go for the cheap, right? You go to the concert, you buy your beers at $15, you get a hot dog for $18. You come back out and you get in your car, you're happy, you're leaving, and you notice that everybody that's leaving the other parking lot is getting their $50 back. Right? That's the analogy for this. Yes, you are paying more to get some of these advantages, but because you're doing this, you have that access. Now, those other folks that went to that concert, they also didn't have to pay tax on their beer, and they didn't have to pay tax on their hot dog. So they get other little spiffs along the way that go along with it. So that's my simple one that I bring up to folks when they bring it up to me first and foremost. And then we can go, we can dive into depth on those overall fees over time and so on and so forth. There are some ways where you can do the analysis. The simple analysis for the term versus perm in another way is take a look at the returns you're getting on a product like ours, a permanent one, and then look at a term insurance, a 30-year term, right? Take that off of what we're funding, put the difference into some sort of a financial vehicle. Which financial vehicle? Right? Which bucket do we want to grow? So we can always bring that back there. We can get to something usable on this tool. And also, what would they have to earn inside of those products, those alternatives, versus 7% inside of this IUL? Does that hit your point?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good, good. Concerns? Pushback? What do you hate?
It's too difficult to explain it to the client.
Too difficult? Okay, I can appreciate that. We do have, so clients in general, well, the population in general, at least for me, I find that they like pictures more than they like numbers, right? So I do a lot of analogies like that, the warehouse for a business, like the going to a concert. So I do like to keep things pretty high level at first. But there is a way of positioning it that's pretty simple that I'd love to show you sometime. But we have something called the perfect financial vehicle. So you sit down with your client and you ask them, if you were to develop your own financial vehicle, what would it look like? So first and foremost, do you want to pay, so they might say, I want to get a good rate of return. Fantastic, write that down, right? How do you want their money to grow? Do you want it to grow where you pay taxes on it every year, or do you want it to grow tax deferred? Great. How about when you access your money? Do you want to have that taxable or non-taxable? Right? Non-taxable. You can go through the list. We've got 8 basic questions that you can ask them, and basically what they're doing is they're building a life insurance policy. Right? Clients want the advantages of the life insurance policy. They just don't want the name. Right? The other thing is a lot of folks, when they're looking at IULs and universal life and stuff like that, they're like, it's not guaranteed, I don't like it. Is their 401k guaranteed? Is their Roth guaranteed? Right? All these types of things, are they guaranteed? We can offer them one huge guarantee with our products is that they're never going to go backwards based on market. So solely on that alone, right, if you have clients that experienced 2008, that have experienced some of these 50% drops in their assets, where do they go for money at that point? Because they haven't lost it until they pull it out. So if you had a vehicle that never went backwards, that the market crashes and all of your other assets go down 80%, whatever the number is, would you like to have something that will have gone down 0 guaranteed based on that market crash? So that you can grab some money that year, even if it's just a one-time thing. And you leave the other money over here so that it can bake and it can regain itself so that you can access it later, instead of cutting yourself off at the knees and taking that income out of that chassis.